Welcome to America Open for Business, where we talk with high-growth entrepreneurs and leaders who have found success in one of the world's most important markets.
Hi, I'm Cameron Heffernan, and I'm the host of America Open for Business, where I talk with high-growth entrepreneurs and leaders who found success in one of the world's most important markets. Our past guests on the show include Brian Smith, who's the founder of the UGG brand, the sheepskin boots from Australia, and author of Birth of a Brand, the book about his own personal journey building what became a billion-dollar consumer footwear brand. This episode today of America Open for Business is brought to you by Your B2B Marketing, a truly global marketing agency. Many mid-market B2B companies face challenges in clearly defining their value proposition and articulating it. So we help founders and leaders understand what makes their products and services invaluable to customers and put that front and center in their messaging. You can check us out at our website, yourb2bmarketing.co. That's .co, not .com. And somebody who knows more about .coms than me is our guest today on the show, and that is Chad Meigs, who I'm very happy to welcome on the show from Central New York. He's the founder and CEO at Third Space Distribution, which is an innovative craft beverage distribution company. Founded in 2020, 3SD's primary focus is assisting independent breweries to grow and scale by offering a new model of distribution, while at the same time introducing craft beer fans to their next favorite beer. Chad loves to learn new things every day, and what gets him excited is connecting with others to make life better for everybody. It's a fantastic mission to start with, and they can just jump right in. Chad, welcome to the show.
Cameron, thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Okay, cool. So I love statistics, right? And I know you're at heart a thinker and a contemplator who thinks things over. So I'm going to throw some statistics at us to get things going. So I read that around 13% of beers sold in the country are from craft brewers. Obviously, then you have to define what does that mean. Small and independent brewers making less than 6 million barrels a year. That sounds like a lot to me, but to a company, it's not. Focusing specifically on beers that are distinctive and innovative. That's very subjective, but we'll let them slide on that part. However, in the state of New York, craft beer makes up only 6.3% of the beers sold, and those made in the state represent 4% of the total. So that, to me, is sort of a disconnect or a gap, and I wanted to hear your take on this, what you think about some of those numbers and the opportunity it may mean for a company like yours.
Absolutely. So I'd like to start out just by talking about New York in general. New York, at my last count, has approximately about 545 breweries, I believe, which is the second most breweries in the entire country, behind California. Because of that, you would think New York would be selling a lot of craft beer, but for whatever reason, we are not. And the main reason behind it is because of distribution. It's really the motivation behind large corporate distribution companies and what they carry. A lot of them don't want to deal with the smaller craft breweries. And what that leads to is just a lot of the same beers everywhere you go, and not a lot of innovation in the space, and then just ultimately poor choice for consumers. And everyone loses in that type of situation, but that distribution company. So we started this company to kind of even the playing fields, to get the little guy representation out in the market and really to bring choice to consumers.
Okay. So your company, your storefront site, your consumer brand is drinknewyorkcraft.com. Is that right?
Correct.
What will people see if they visit that site?
So Drink on White Craft is just it's a Shopify website. You can go, and it's like any other, website like Amazon, but just for New York State craft beer. So you go in there, you can sort through the beers, you can choose ones that you like, add them to your cart, and then we ship them to your house via common carrier. Most people will come to the site for the first time, a first time customer, and they'll kind of, browse through the site to look at things that, interest them. Say you're an IPA guy. So they see a couple IPAs that they maybe haven't seen before. And I'll try one of those. And we sell individuals, which I think is key. So most people come on, they'll pick out a few individual beers, say they'll make up a 12-pack or case or something of, one-offs, have them sent to their house. They enjoy them with friends and family, and when they come back again, they tend to purchase more of the ones that they already bought that they enjoyed. If Brewery X, they buy their porter or their stout or something like that on top of that first IPA that they tried. I think one of the most powerful things that we do is that single can. One of the pet peeves that I have is I would go out to my favorite beer store and I try to pick up a 4-pack or something like that, bring it home. I haven't had this 4-pack before, but it looked cool. Like the can looked cool. So I brought it home, tried it, like, oh, this is awful. And I'm the type that can't pour it down the drain. So I take that 4-pack and I shove it into the back of my fridge, thinking that I'll have some friends over next weekend and I'll pot it off on one of them. Well, over time, the back of your fridge becomes the front of your fridge, and your wife is on your throat for having too much beer around. So I think that's one of the powerful concepts: individual cans, resale, and people coming back for more.
Yeah, and eventually those friends will start to wise up and not take what you're trying to offer them, right?
Let's not go to Chad's.
Right.
He's got old beer. Yeah.
So that you see that if you go to Wegmans or Safeway or some of the bigger grocery store chains now, in the last 10 years, maybe you don't have to pick a 6-pack of what they're, have there. You can mix and match. Maybe it's a little more expensive, but yeah, that's great. And I don't have to make a sacrifice and get a 12-pack and I only like one of them, or the first sip is terrible. So what problem do you see that you're solving?
So I mean, you hit it right off the bat. There's New Yorkers are not drinking New York beer, and having 545 breweries in the entire state it's a sad statistic that we're around 4% of New Yorkers drinking New York beer. So a little bit on my background. I actually started a hop farm about 12 years ago, and through selling hops to these small individual breweries, I learned of the intricacies of distribution, which are many. And for the common beer drinker, they really don't understand how their beer actually gets out there. So I learned of the intricacies of the distribution world, specifically for craft beer, and it doesn't work for a lot of the breweries. Like 80+% of them, it doesn't work, and for that reason, they don't get into distribution at all. Some of them kind of dabble in self distribution a little bit. Barely any of them do D2C just because it's so expensive and time consuming. So I really saw a niche. This was right after COVID too, where people were getting things shipped to their house, and I really saw an area where I could really shine and help the consumer get more access to choice and help these little breweries be able to scale their businesses. So we went for it.
Mm-hmm. That's pretty cool. I pulled up an article about you guys from, I think, last summer on Syracuse.com, and a couple things stood out to me as interesting or noteworthy. One was a quote, probably like a paraphrase from a brewer. The difference between selling direct to consumers and going through a distributor. Do you want to make, excuse me, do you want to make a $5 pint or a $5 case? In other words, a lot of these breweries, probably smaller, maybe they started as a family business or even a restaurant or something, were big, where they're based, but don't have the scale and the logistical, capacity to do much distribution. So their sales are on premise, people coming in, and they can have a much higher profit margin that way. Why would they want to go through some 2 or 3 level distribution network when their margin goes down? Is that accurate?
Absolutely. So it's really a matter of, do you want to be a lifestyle business or do you want to be a growth business? So I think, in my last 15, 20 years in this industry, I've really, noticed a couple of patterns. So when a brewery first opens, and it tends to be, a glorified home brewer that makes great beer and his buddies talk him into opening shop. Their best model is, you're right, pint glasses over the bar. You're making your best margins there, and if that's as ambitious as you want to get, great. Like that's a great business. But for some, they do want to grow. They just don't necessarily know how to get there. They look at the Saranaks of the world or the the Dogfish Head and like, well, how do I get there? So those are the people that we're really can help. So the order of operations usually, they start off at the tap room selling pints over the bar, and then they get into a little bit of self distribution. They're like, okay, let's get out here a little. Let's keg some beer. Let's bring it around town to our favorite places. And they say, oh, like this is pretty good. We're able to make larger batch sizes now. Like maybe we can upgrade our fermenter. Maybe we can start canning. Maybe we can start kegging. And then that starts to snowball a little bit, and then it becomes a point where it's a pain in the ass. It's usually the head brewer that's also the head bartender that's schlepping a keg or two across town, and they just get tired of it. So they need help scaling that portion of the business out, and that's where we come in. Like one of the first questions I actually ask some of my breweries is, "Hey, have you tried self distribution at all?" And some of them that say no, I'm a little hesitant to work with them because you really need to know what it's like. You really need to know the value of what a distributor brings, because you're right. If you just look at it from an accountant's point of view, why am I going to give this company 30% to get my beer out there? Well, the answer is scale. So if you want that, if you want that growth business, you're eventually going to have a partner.
So when we first talked about this, I didn't even know this was possible, right? Because you've got different levels of complexity. You're not mailing steel or toys or things. You're mailing, first of all, across state lines, a product that's not consumable, legally consumable by everybody. So maybe we start with that. How long has this been something that's possible? You can mail alcohol to consumers.
It's really state by state. So some states allow it, some states don't. And here in New York State, it's kind of a gray area, so to speak. So there's only a handful of us that actually do this in the state, because you have to have a certain license to be able to do it. But at the very beginning of this, and this is pre-COVID, I had this idea and I wanted to be able to do this. So I need to somehow distribute beer through the mail. And I had reached out to the state liquor authority, and they're like, "Oh yeah, you can't do that." I'm like, "Well, I see another company over here. How are they doing it?" So it's kind of reading in between the lines with the state liquor authority. But I finally did get the green light from their head lawyer, and it's been just full bore forward since. I think the reason others haven't gotten into it is because of the barriers to entry. Alcohol being a regulated product, there is so much red tape that you have to get through in order to even open your doors. I mean, I had to be sitting in a warehouse for close to 12 months before I could even sell a beer, just waiting in line for the state liquor authority to approve my license. So the cards are stacked against the average Joe entrepreneur that wants to start something like this. So that's probably the reason why we don't see more of them. But it's a very powerful thing. Consumers want that omni-channel experience, and I think it's here to stay.
I mean, more and more every day we're seeing this. I call it disintermediation. Like Amazon just pulled up on the street here, drop something off. I can go directly there. It's very convenient for me. We're just seeing disintermediation of the banks, of healthcare, of different sectors of this country and around the world, really. And this is always going to be a tricky one because it's products that you don't want my 6-year-old going and ordering a 6-pack from your site also. So you're trying to solve a couple of problems at once. You've also got the aspect of the producers, the breweries. Are you finding them open to your idea, to this concept, or they think this is going to take away some of my sales, or is it a positive thing for them?
Oh, it's absolutely a positive thing, and because we have two lines of business, one being the more traditional, kegs and cases to bars and restaurants, and then the D2C side of things, it's really easy for a brewery to, so to speak, get in bed with us because we can just start doing the D2C for them first. All of them want to do it. They just haven't figured out how to do it and, effectively. So having a distribution license and being able to work with, 50 plus breweries that we have on our site right now, creates economies of scale. So we're able to do it at a lower cost than someone were to do it themselves. Plus, consumers come on to the site, and as I said, they want to order individuals. They want to order beers they haven't had before. they want to order seasonals from various places, so they get choice, and I think that is, the value add. And so far, the breweries, some of them I sometimes have to turn away because we have
Really?
too many. So
Wow.
it is. I guess that's a good problem to have. But yeah, that's been the easy part for them is to get on the D2C site.
Hmm. What's the biggest impediment to your growth right now?
Funds. I mean, really, we're doing a convertible note raise right now to try and scale this out. Right now, our scope is New York State, but we do have, you know, countrywide ambitions. But yeah, it's the traditional retail side of things. Kegs and cases, the bars and restaurants. I need trucks. I need sales
Mhm.
reps. I need things like that to be able to scale this out. And we can only grow so fast. Organically. We need a little, we can't, we can continue to bootstrap it, but at this point in time, I feel it's a race for market share. Once other companies start, catching on and starting their own D2C channels, we would be better fit if we have a large chunk of that pie than just to kind of take it slow. So, capital.
Yeah. I suppose not only are those the entities you're competing with, but then there's nothing stopping Matt's or Budweiser or other, big breweries from there taking their craft beers and doing a similar approach. The advantage you have is that you're agnostic. You can offer beers from anybody and truly, a locally made product, right?
Absolutely. And some of the larger guys are getting onto it because they in New York State, some of them are allowed to self-distribute. So some of them are jumping on board, but again, it's limited choice. If you're, Saranac, you only have so many SKUs in your portfolio where,
Mhm.
if you're a distribution company, sky's the limit.
Hmm. Hmm. What do you see as what's the pie in the sky potential for this? If we flip through your investor prospectus right now, what do you see as the potential for this market?
So right now we're in our infancy as a company. I'd
Mhm.
almost call it proof of concept. So, once we nail this for New York State, I see there being a franchise opportunity here. So if you
Mhm.
notice our site, it's Drink NY Craft, Drink New York Craft. And I always get questions from investors. Well, why New York? Why New York only? Well, for the answer to that is really local. Like people in New York want to support New York. They want to support their neighbors. They want their money to stay in state. So I think if we were to franchise this kind of thing, we could take what we did here in New York, kind of, package it up and then have it throughout the rest of the United States. Like for instance, we own, Drink VT Craft, Drink, RI Craft, Drink CA Craft, Drink OH Craft. So all these websites could be tied in the back end, and all talk to one another, do some cross selling and things like that.
Cool. I'm on for those on the video, not on the audio, it ain't gonna work, but I'm on his site now. I click yes, I'm over 21. And then we go to a very cool looking website with a whole bunch of, I could spend hours on this site just kind of scrolling through, and you must have fun making the content and all the
Oh yeah.
tasting sessions. You just got to do it, right?
The breweries are fun, going, that's my favorite part of the job. Going to the breweries, meeting the brewers. They're all, very colorful, friendly people. And the beer industry is like no other industry I've ever been in. There's a sense of collaboration. There's a sense
Mhm.
of us versus, the big guys. It's craft versus the Budweisers and the Coors Millers of the world, the David versus Goliath type thing. So the camaraderie is fun. It's a competitive industry, but yet people want to help each other out, and people want to see others succeed. So it's a cool space to be in for sure.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Um, if you pull this off, this could be a pretty disruptive kind of play.
I think so too. As the three-tier network of beer distribution, meaning the suppliers that make it, the wholesalers that distribute it, and the retailers that sell it, has been in place now for a century plus. So it's kind of it's an old model that has just been around forever, and it's always
Mm,
been what it's always been. And over time, it's kind of benefited that middle tier, that distributor tier. So what we're trying to do is just, bring that power back to the people, get that consumer choice, and then help these breweries. It's kind of a tough landscape out there for them right now. They need all the help that they can get. So we just want a level playing field for everybody. And I think that is kind of a disruptive thing. Distribution isn't all that sexy, but I think people, getting beautiful craft beers that they couldn't otherwise get their hands on delivered to the convenience of their home is
mhm,
something that people want.
mhm. And can you tell me a bit about why you settled on Shopify, just from some of our listeners in the e-commerce space, and that you're able to share? Obviously, I think Amazon is a very different beast, but how'd you end up in Shopify?
So I'm glad you asked. So before I was a hop farmer, I was a computer geek, writing web development software for many years. I really like Shopify. It's a really easy platform to, you don't need to write any code. Sometimes I do like to get my hands dirty in it, but they just made it really easy. Amazon's great, but they're all encompassing, right? Like they got a little bit of everything. They like to take a lot of your money, and then if you're successful at it, they'll just repeat what you're selling under themselves, their own types of brands, and it's a difficult market. But Shopify makes it easy. I think they have like 3% or something like that, which is relatively insignificant. And it's just easy. The editor's easy. The adding products is a piece of cake. It helps with SEO. There's all sorts of plugins, and they work. I've had experience with WordPress and things like that, where if you upgrade a plugin or something and everything breaks and all hell breaks loose. Shopify, so far, knock on wood, has been very stable, and I enjoy working with it.
Okay. Anything you guys are doing in the AI space, either for inventory or your own site content, or anything there for working with your breweries that would be interesting to talk about for our listeners?
I think there's some value there in like big data, AI, maybe not. I don't know. I'm trying to wrap my head around that and how it could, you know, benefit us. Maybe some sort of, people come onto our site. I think our biggest complaint that we get is they don't know what to buy. The choice is a little overwhelming. They haven't heard of a lot of the brands, or they don't know. Maybe there's something there with AI. You come in there, tell them a little bit about yourself, tell them what you like.
Mm,
Some engine that kind of spits something out that
yeah.
way. But there's a lot of value in the the data too. I think one phase three of what we're doing here could possibly be like some brick and mortar stores around the New York State or wherever it might be, and
Yeah.
just knowing who's buying what they like, where they live, how much they make, male or female, age. We'd be able to strategically place brick and mortars around. So I think there's a lot of value in the data that of our users.
Have you guys thought about that before? Like a pop-up tasting room, or a drink NY craft traveling, fall event or something?
Yeah, absolutely. We actually have a travel team. I got a guy that we do farmers markets, we do events, we do beer tasting dinners. I mean,
Nice.
obviously this is all locally, but
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. That's a big part of the business for
Yeah.
sure.
Great way to get the brand, the name out. Harder to scale, but certainly a way. There's a gentleman I'm talking with, talked with in the podcast, Brian Smith. He's the founder of UGG, those sheepskin boots in Australia. And he talked
Mhm.
about that, how at the beginning, this is in the 80s, pre-internet and all that, but how a lot of it would start with word of mouth, and people who'd go personally in the surf shops where he was selling his product remembered him, and things kind of grew from there. And their strategy was to start with, rather than trying to get into Nordstrom's and Macy's at that time, starting with the smaller boutique brands. He called it, we're going after the what's it called? Going after the mice, not the elephants. And you get enough
Yeah,
mice, eventually you can take on an elephant.
absolutely. It's the same concept here. I mean, brands are built on the on premise, meaning people going into bars and things like that. That's where they
Mhm.
start to see. That's where they do their experimentation. And then once you get out, you walk into a store. Oh, I remember last Friday night when I was at the pub, I saw that beer. I'm going to pick that up and bring it home. So you want to get deep in your backyard before you spread a little too thin. So I think that's what we're doing right now in New York. And who knows, maybe in your state, wherever you're listening to right now, you'll see drink state initials here craft.com.
I would love that. I love having you come here to Ohio.
Yeah.
I remember the movie The Founder about McDonald's and Ray Kroc, and there was a big aha light bulb moment in the movie where the Ray Kroc was sitting across from one of his advisors, and he said, "You're not a restaurant business. You're a franchise business. You're a real estate business." And I think one of the messages of him and Brian Smith talks about that evolution. You got to go through all these things. You got to fail. You got to have a challenge and overcome that. And only then do you get, in year 8 or 11 or whatever, your breakthrough. And, it's just all about entrepreneurs going through these different steps and having those failures. The Seth Godin book talks about, the most fundable entrepreneur is the one who's failed the most.
Yeah. I really wish there was a playbook for doing what we're doing, specifically dealing with the state liquor authorities and, because it's alcohol, each state has their own rules. So you have to make sure you follow those rules. So that's kind of why we're nailing it for New York State. But if they had a playbook, I would welcome to read that, but they don't. So we're making mistakes as we go, but we got a great team behind us. We got a lot of smart people that have been in the business for a long time. So we're stumbling our way through, one step backward, 2 step forward, maybe. So we're making it happen.
Okay. Well, I'm going to ask you a final question before we wrap up. And I'm going to direct people again to your website, drinknycraft.com. When you look, so it's been 3 years now, right, that you've been working on this iteration of the business. So far, what's been your biggest success to point to that gives you that hope to get up in the morning and that drive to keep going and building?
It's the D2C side of things. That's kind of my background. We did a beer box with the New York State Brewers Association over Christmas. We called it the 24 Beers of Holiday Cheer, and it was highly successful. We had our biggest revenue month to date, and it was a great success. We had people reaching back out to us saying this was awesome. I would have never seen these beers or had them if it wasn't for this. So I think that's kind of what we're doing. Our mission is really, it's mission based. We need New Yorkers to drink more New York beer, and that's exactly what that box was. It was a curation of beers from all across the state. And it went all across the state. People from Buffalo to New York City up to the Adirondacks, all corners of New York State bought it, and that was the New York the Brewers Association thought it was a success. We thought it was a success. The consumers thought it was a success, and that's exactly why we're here.
That's very cool. A lot of people not from the state don't realize to go from Buffalo to Saranac to Staten Long Island is going to take you a good chunk of time to get through that whole triangle. So
yeah,
well, it's I am excited. I'm going to keep my eye on this and watch this as it grows and takes off, and look forward to checking in with you as things evolve, and wish you the best of luck. We've been talking today to Chad Meigs, founder and CEO of Third Space Distribution, Drink New York Craft, an innovative craft beverage distribution company. And Chad, anything else you want to close out with before we let our listeners go?
No, I just want to say thanks for having me, and wherever you're listening to this, and if you're into beer, support local. Go out, figure out who your local breweries are, and get to know them. And the money that you spend in their tap room goes into their pockets, and it stays locally, right around where you are, which helps everyone in the local economy.
Cool. Thanks, Chad.
Thank you, Cameron. Appreciate you having me.
Thanks for listening to the America Open for Business podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.